In nearly 30% of his career starts, David Blough dialed up a 75-yard touchdown pass within the first 3 plays of the game. That data signals an end of the passive era, and it suggests that Terry McLaurin might finally be functioning as a true vertical primary option for the Washington Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9. You can also find me writing for Commanders on SI, and I'm here with you 5 days a week, even throughout the offseason. Today, on today's episode, we are going to look at a quick method in David Blough's history that could really help Jayden Daniels control opposing defenses. And we're going to talk about the right kind of running back to add this offseason for the running back room. But first, how David Blough might be introducing a new form of intelligent aggression to the Washington Commanders offense in 2026. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. So visit FanDuel.com and get started today. Instead of a passive-aggressive offense, which I think is more of what we've seen the past couple of years in Washington, especially in 2025, I expect to see an aggressive offense, at least to start games under offensive coordinator David Blough, one that isn't afraid to dial up big shots to show the defense that they're going to be the ones to set the tone. And part of that is just from a dive into the mentality of who David Blough is. And of course, it's all a little bit subjective because we haven't seen the David Blough offense just yet. But as we try to kind of sniff out what a David Blough offense might look like with Jayden Daniels, I keep coming back to one kind of clear point of conversation that we had on our initial deep dive into David Blough, and that is the Jayden Daniels regression data in his air yards per attempt. So I know he didn't play a lot of games in 2025, unfortunately, but when you compare 2024, his rookie season, to 2025, Jayden Daniels attempted 7.63 yards per air yards per attempt in his rookie season. That number dropped to 6.85 air yards per attempt in 2025. It kind of showcased, we talked about this multiple times during the season, that Jayden just didn't look comfortable, didn't look confident in the offense, didn't look confident in what they were trying to do. And honestly, the offense as a whole just kind of got static, got a little simple, got bogged down a little bit in its own problems. And it just looked very passive aggressive. Like, it wanted to be aggressive. They wanted to take some shots, but they were only going to take the shots if the defense gave them the shots. Whereas David Blough, what I'm expecting a little bit more of is dictating those shots. We're going to take those shots because we want to take them, and we're going to dictate the tempo to you. Adam Peters talked in his end of season press conference and said, quote, "It's receivers that he can trust and throw to, so he's not holding on to the ball longer," end quote. And I think that receiver you have right now on the roster is Terry McLaurin, and holding on to the ball longer obviously is going to be a personnel issue. It's a scheme trust issue, because just because you're throwing long balls doesn't mean you got to sit there and hold the ball for 5 seconds. Remember, not every long ball has to be a 70-yarder where you need to let that receiver get downfield. You can throw the ball when the receiver is 15 yards downfield and maybe connect with them, say 30 yards downfield for some of these deep passes. And then again, to the stat that I started off the episode with, 2 out of David Blough's 7 starts. So again, David Blough didn't have a lot of starts in his NFL career, but in 2 of those starts, he connected, not just dialed up, but connected on a 75-plus yard touchdown within the first 3 plays of 2 of those 7 starts. And we talk about those 2 of 7 starts because we know the quarterbacks, pretty much every offensive coordinator I've ever talked to has said that scripted part of the game, the first 15 plays or so, is a combination of the coordinator and the quarterback. And the quarterback gets a lot of say in how the game starts off in that script. And so this kind of shows you who David Blough was as a quarterback, because he wasn't someone that was ever thought of as the most mechanically gifted or the most athletically gifted. He didn't have the cannon of an arm or anything like that guys, around the league will have, yet he's still out here not just dialing up. And I mean, again, he's not the offensive coordinator, but between he and the coordinator, they're not just dialing up these deep shots early on in games. They're connecting on some of those. So under David Blough, I would expect some of those similar things. I'm not saying every single game within the first 3 plays of the game, you should expect a 75-plus yard shot. But I think that you're going to see a little bit more aggression for the sake of being aggressive, and that is where Terry McLaurin comes in, specifically right now when you look at the 2026 roster, because when you look at the guys who are going to be on this roster right now, you got Terry, you got Jalen Lane, you got Luke McCaffrey. There's some other guys that maybe will be back, right? Debo Samuel is someone that I think a lot of people would like to see back. Obviously, Traylon Burks had some good moments in his time with the team since joining them midseason. So he's another guy that people want back. But the draft obviously presents opportunities. Free agency is going to present opportunities. But when you look at the guys on the roster, look at the guys that are for sure coming back, Terry McLaurin obviously is kind of that deep target. And not only that, but he's also the number 1 target. And he's somebody that I think we all agree just wasn't being leveraged enough in the offense the last 2 years, wasn't being moved around enough, wasn't being showcased enough. People weren't doing enough things to try and get him open. It was just simply, we're going to line Terry up, and he's our number 1 guy. So we know we want to give him the ball, but we're kind of just waiting for the defense to say, hey, go ahead and give Terry the ball versus manufacturing ways to get him looks. I think David Blough is going to be a little bit different in there, and not just the deep ball, not just the third play of the game, 70-yard pass and all those things, but I think there's just going to be more of a deliberate nature in trying to get Terry more involved in the offense early, and then, of course, more often. And something that was interesting and some of the success that David Blough has had and throughout his NFL career, 2019 preseason was really interesting because he ends up getting some opportunities to play with the Cleveland Browns. It was his rookie year. He's an undrafted free agent, and Todd Monken was actually getting the opportunity to call the offense at times under Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens was the offensive coordinator. Todd Monken hadn't had that level of experience yet, so they were using the preseason to allow him to have some opportunities to call plays. And Todd comes from, of course, an air raid type of background. Now, it doesn't mean that they're just completely rewriting the offense that David Blough was operating there in the preseason, but he did do fairly well. Did have a couple interceptions. Undrafted rookie, preseason is going to happen, but completed 11 of 17 passes, played his final preseason game with the Cleveland Browns against the Detroit Lions. And at the time, the Detroit Lions were in need of quarterback depth. They needed to go get guys, try to bring people in, and they saw enough out of David Blough, whether it's on tape or in person or a combination of the two, that literally right after that game, they went out there and they traded for David, brought him into the Detroit Lions organization, where he ends up getting exposed to, guys like Darrell Bevel and things like that, and some different offenses. So I think that just, again, kind of studying who David Blough was as a professional quarterback when he had the opportunity to have his say, which we know is more so in those first scripted plays, it just shows that he's a guy who's going to be aggressive in the opening of games, trying to dictate the tape or the pace of, rather, to opposing defenses. But of course, that's just the opening. And obviously, games are not won and lost, in the first 15 plays. That's just how you set the tone. But managing the game further from there, it takes more than just an aggressive attitude. It requires the ability to really be kind of smooth in and out of adjustments, in and out of the transitions in your game plan, which means that the running back room is a supporting element to that quarterback, to that passing attack, also has to be well-rounded. So let's take a look at the running back room as it stands today for David Blough's offense in 2026, and a couple of options out there that they might go after in free agency. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For the majority of the National Football League, the NFL draft pick positions are set, and so many teams are looking for franchise quarterbacks. And if you ever wish to become a pro quarterback, getting drafted by teams like the Washington Commanders, well, now you can, because there's a mobile game made just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. It is the game where you step into the cleats of the number 1 overall draft pick, and then it's your job from there to take your team to greatness and help turning a failing franchise into a dynasty. It is the number 1 quarterback career mode game on the mobile app store, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control, including chemistry, including upgrades, roster moves, all kinds of stuff. And you can actually play the games in 2D. You're going to deal with the ups and downs of a career, and you're going to do everything you can to make your franchise successful. So head to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special just for Locked On listeners. Use the promo code Locked On, all one word, all caps, in the game store, and get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, Football Legend QB1, it's your legacy. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all throughout the playoffs and the postseason. And Prize Picks is incredibly easy to get started with. If you haven't already been part of it, you pick 2 or more players, choose more or less on their player projections, and then you watch the games. It just makes it a little bit more engaging and ensures that during the playoffs and the big game, you have a little bit of skin in the game, right? You can also get early payouts, which lets you cash out if a player starts off hot, and you're going to love being in the mix of different teams, building lineups, and just really truly affects and enhances the way you watch the game. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day and to the everydayers. Those of you who come through for every single episode, including into the offseason. A special thank you goes out to you for making this another part of your watching or listening routine. Thank you to everybody for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you haven't already, please check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. Go to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com. You got a couple of tiers there with varying benefits, including ad-free episodes, bonus episodes like locker room audio, film studies, and all that stuff. I've got a little bit of a battle rhythm plan that I'm going to try out this week to try to get you guys some more film studies. So all access, folks, keep an eye out for that. But again, lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to check that out today. The opening script to a game is one thing. And like I said, we can take a little bit of information from how David Blough helped organize the opening scripts when he was a starting quarterback. Only 7 games that he got to do it, but in 2 of those 7 games, dialed up and connected on 2 75-plus yard touchdown plays. One of those, by the way, to Kenny Golladay, which is a name that I haven't heard in at least a little while. So kind of takes you back there just a little bit, not too far, but just a little bit. But of course, managing games is going to take more than that, right? It takes more balance, takes a smooth kind of transition in and out of adjustments and things like that. And so to do that, you need a well-rounded roster. And to do that, you need a well-rounded ground game because, again, going back to Adam Peters and some of his comments in the end of season press conference, he said, quote, "It's running backs to control the ball and not put it all on Jayden's shoulders," end quote, is something he said when he was talking about how the team can better support, but also better protect Jayden Daniels. Bottom line is, if the ball is not in Jayden Daniels' hands, then he's not going to get hit, right? Like he's not supposed to get hit. He's not supposed to be at such a great danger of getting injured. And of course, that's something that every NFL team wants to do, not just Jayden Daniels, but I mean, you look at, unfortunately, the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos are going to the AFC Championship game, and they're going to have to try to win that game, and they're going to have to try to win the Super Bowl potentially without Bo Nix. Why? Because he broke his ankle, and he broke his ankle on a play late in the game where he's running the ball and ends up taking contact. And, those are types of things that can happen in the NFL, unfortunately. And so the more you can hand it off to a running back, the more you can give it to somebody else, a playmaker like Terry McLaurin or someone else, the better off you're going to be. So how can we kind of dive into David Blough's history and try to project a little bit of what maybe he's going to look to do? Well, you kind of go back to one of the places where he gets his roots, and that, of course, is the Detroit Lions. He was there during Ben Johnson's rise in 2019. Ben Johnson, or 2019, Ben Johnson, no, 2021, I'm sorry. Ben Johnson goes from being the Detroit Lions tight ends coach. He rises up mid-season there. Dan Campbell takes over offensive play calling, elevates Ben Johnson to becoming the pass game coordinator for the offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown takes off, but then so too does the rest of the offense from there. Ben Johnson becomes a full-fledged offensive coordinator in Detroit in 2020. So again, David Blough is there firsthand. He's in the quarterback room. He's in all the meeting rooms during the transition, during the changes, during all these adjustments that are being made. And if you go back to that Detroit kind of approach, when they have that weapon running back in their system, so a Jahmyr Gibbs type of guy, and again, David Blough hasn't been there for the entirety of like Jahmyr Gibbs' rise per se, but when Jahmyr Gibbs is on the field, you look at about a 55% to 45% pass to run ratio, with the pass being the 55%. So Jahmyr Gibbs using that weapon status of his, kind of like an Austin Eckler, but obviously I think Jahmyr more dynamic than Oster was even in his prime, to be honest with you. And then when they had their hammer back in there, their power back, you flip over to about a 44% pass, 56% run differential with guys like David Montgomery, which would have been a guy like maybe Brian Robinson Jr. in the past. I think right now is a Chris Rodriguez Jr. type. So you see the attempt to be balanced no matter what type of back is in there, but certainly the willingness to lean on one side or the other, because while you're 55% pass, you're also using that running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, Austin Eckler, whoever it is, in the passing game. And while you're more run, 56% run with that power back in there, you're doing so because it's really effective and kind of helps to set a tone. So when you look at the roster for the Washington Commanders, I think it's pretty clear if you've been paying attention to this team, right? The hammer on this team has been Chris Rodriguez Jr. Now, he's not currently projected on the 2026 roster because his contract is up. He's going to have an expired contract. Now, he is a restricted free agent, which means that the team can tender him, get a pretty affordable deal on him, bring him back for a year, or if a team goes out there and scoops him up, just kind of depending on what kind of tender they put on him, which we'll get into later on in the offseason as it comes up, then, they can get some draft compensation back and do these types of things. So he's more of the hammer type. He's more your David Montgomery type of running back, and that'll allow the offense, and a guy like him would allow the offense kind of lean more 56%, run versus 45% pass, or 45 or 55% pass, with a different type of running back in there, like Jacory Croskey-Merritt, more of a one cut wide zone stretch runner type of thing. Kind of fits that Drew Petzing, Kyle Shanahan wide zone scheme that he also learned at one point in his career. David Blough did. But the problem with Jacory Croskey-Merritt is he's not proven yet as kind of a safety valve receiver type, right? Like, he doesn't have that Jahmyr Gibbs ability to be a receiver out of the backfield that Austin Eckler also brought. That's something that Jacory Croskey-Merritt, we just haven't been able to see enough out of him. Now, I know that some of you believe that he's got that ability in him. I certainly know that he himself believes it. Talk to him about it, and he thinks that he's capable of being a receiving back, capable of being a pass protecting back. I think Chris Rodriguez Jr. can be more of a receiving back than we've seen. I don't know that I don't think he'd ever get to like Jahmyr Gibbs type of level of receiving back, but certainly enough to where at least if you used it enough, or you tried to use it enough, even if you just put him out there in route trees and route combinations, that it forces the defense to be a little bit honest. But the bottom line is, whether it's Chris, whether it's Jacory, Bill, neither of them has a proven, established third down back, right? Pass catcher, pass blocker type of running back. So you have to go out there and look for guys who can potentially do that. And when you look at the free agent market, two names specifically stand out, and that is Rachaad White, soon to be former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, who, if you were on Twitter, has made no secret of his desire to play again with Jayden Daniels. And I've told you already that I'm pretty sure his primary destination of choice would be the Washington Commanders. When Bucky Irving took over the primary running back duties in Tampa, Rachaad White was, I would say reduced, but was left to be the third down back. He's a pass protector. He's a pass catcher. It's literally what the Buccaneers used him for after Bucky Irving took over primary running back roles. And then you also have Breece Hall, who I think would be a more expensive option than Rachaad White, but Breece Hall is certainly a formative, a proven commodity 3-down back with the New York Jets. Has done a lot of good things there. So if you get one of those two guys, whether it be Rachaad White or whether it be Breece Hall, and certainly you're going to have your favorites and all that, either way, you round out a really good running back room with Chris Rodriguez Jr., who can now become your power back, your short yardage guy, things like that. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who can be your one-cut guy, a little bit slicker as he continues to develop, and then either one of those two free agent backs to really kind of round the whole thing out. And you have enough versatility in the other two guys that you at least can do some things to prevent defenses from kind of honing in on one sort of operation when they're on the field. But there's more ways than one to run an offense, and it can't just rely on running backs, can't just rely on Terry McLaurin, can't just rely on Jayden Daniels. Giving him options, however, will allow him to counter whatever the defense is trying to predict they're going to do at the line of scrimmage. We'll talk about how David Blough can do that from his history coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by FanDuel. With the divisional round here this weekend, FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users are getting a profit boost pack waiting for you inside the app. Every single playoff game day, you're going to see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day, see which boosts that you want to apply, and those boosts will then let you lean into your game day instincts to see how much you can make off of the bets that you like versus trying to pigeonhole you into some bets that you may not like. It lets you use your game day instincts. You can back momentum, you can look at defense, quarterback play, coaching, whatever it is. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts help your bets feel bigger as well. So make your picks, apply your profit boost, and go after those bigger payouts. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. There, of course, is more than one way to run an offense. So while David Blough's history would suggest that you potentially are going to get an offensive coordinator who's not afraid to set the tone early with deep shots, with aggressive play calling, to show the defense that they're going to have to play off of what the offense does versus the other way around. That's certainly there. There's also a history of David Blough for playing some heavy ground and pound offenses, but also using a diverse group of running backs, or being around systems, I should say, that use a diverse group of running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, which, again, to a lesser proven elements could be the next Jacory Croskey-Merritt, Chris Rodriguez Jr., with the addition of a guy like Rachaad White or Breece Hall. But what about how David Blough can put the control of the offense in Jayden Daniels' hands a little bit better and unlocking Ben Sinnott? So we also talked on our last deep dive into David Blough, this being our second episode of doing that, trying to get more into kind of the experience that David Blough has had, over 200 years of combined football knowledge that he has been around, and up to like 7 different types of systems that he's been exposed to. So it's going to be really hard to pinpoint what a David Blough offense is going to look like. What we can talk about, which is what we're talking about here and in the last episode, is just kind of what some of the elements he's been around look like and what they could look like with the Washington Commanders if they're used. And these two things really interesting to me: the unlocking of Ben Sinnott and what's called the can call. So we'll get into both of those here, starting with Ben Sinnott. Going back again to Adam Peters' end of season press conference, talking about the tight end room, specifically talking about the loss of Zach Ertz. Adam Peters basically answered the question by posing another answer saying, quote, "Where can you find someone who's really, really good on third down? Could it be one of those guys?" End quote, asking about John Bates, Ben Sinnott, Colson Yankoff, even a guy like Lawrence Cager, who's got a futures contract with the Washington Commanders, guys that are already on the roster, instead of having to go into free agency or having to go into the NFL draft looking for another tight end like Zach Ertz. And I think this is somewhere where David Blough's history can really kind of help unlock things. When he was with the Minnesota Vikings under Kevin O'Connell, the Minnesota Vikings were really using TJ Hawkinson really well. TJ Hawkinson ends up going to Detroit. And at one point, David Blough ended up back in Detroit, and TJ Hawkinson was being used pretty well there before the days of Sam Laporta and all that stuff. And of course, everybody's been studying that as well as we move up. So I think Ben Sinnott is a player that could potentially be unlocked a little bit more versatility out of him, things like that. Don't know if he's a step up Zach Ertz replacement 1-for-1 in year one. So potentially still look for maybe a tight end addition in the free agent market. But I think that at least gives Ben Sinnott a better outlook as a tight end, as just a playmaker in the NFL. And then there's the can call. So the can call is really highly focused, or highly featured, I should say, in the Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay type of offense, right? And basically what it is you get 2 plays called into the headset. So Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, whoever it is, they're going to send, David Blough is going to send 2 play calls into the huddle. Typically, one is a pass, one is a run. And there's one that's a primary. It's the one that you come to the line of scrimmage with. This is the play that we're going to run. But then you have your can call, and it's an automatic second play for you as a quarterback. And all you got to do is say can. Now, typically you hear him say it multiple times. Can. Say it looking to the left. Say it again, looking to the right. Give everybody the opportunity to hear the call. And basically what it does is it allows the quarterback to audible the play without having to, at the line of scrimmage, literally audible everybody, right? Because some of these play calls can be really, really wordy, right? Like trips right, jet sweep, X waggle, Y, whatever, Y Omaha. And that means this. That means the team is going to do this. That means the offense is going to do this. Then you have another call in at the line of scrimmage. So I'm trying to audible it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you to do this. I'm trying to tell this guy to do this. I just say can, and we've already got the play call in. Plus, now you don't get to hear what my audibles are. Because if I come to the line of scrimmage, I'm like, hey, Panda Z right, or Panda Romeo, and eventually you're going to pick up on like, hey, Romeo means they're flipping it's a run play and they're flipping it from the left to the right side, whatever it is. So now I can just say can, and now you don't know what the second call is, and there's nothing that gives you an indication of what that second call necessarily is. So it's a huge benefit for the quarterback. It just adds a layer of advantage to the offense for the Washington Commanders if David Blough uses the system. Again, it's a system that he's been exposed to, so we'll have to see, but it's just another thing there that can potentially give Jayden Daniels a weapon at the line of scrimmage against opposing defenses. So, again, there's a lot here. David Blough has always been known as a smart guy. He's always been known as a very good processor. So I think that's something that he can, Jayden's got the physical abilities. He's got the tools, getting the mental part of it down, getting the processing part of it down. All these things I think is going to really help unlock him. And I think that's what David Blough brings the potential to do, is not just diversify the offense a little bit, but also create some advantages where there aren't advantages already, and then help Jayden Daniels grow as a processor to pair with those physical skills that he has. So that is going to do it for this episode, our second deep dive, so to speak, into David Blough. And again, not what we will see because we don't know what we're going to see, but what we might see based on his history. That's what we spent these last two episodes doing here on Locked On Commanders. Our next episode of Locked On Commanders will continue through the news cycle. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a defense coordinator to talk about, but if not, trust me, we're going to have something to talk about because the NFL is never too far away. So make sure you are subscribed or following along on Locked On Commanders or with Locked On Commanders so you get all of the latest episodes. You can also follow me on X at DHarrison82, on Instagram at DHarrison_82. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club was quite literally built for you. LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com. Check out the Everydayer Club. It's got 2 tiers, differing advantages to both tiers. One tier, you get everything you get in the lower tier plus more. One tier, the lower tier, you get some advantages like ad-free episodes, things like that. Again, LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com. For your next listen of the day, check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Locked On NFL dropping to give you the national outlook across the league. To the Everydayers, I see you and I appreciate you every single day. Thank you again for coming through for yet another episode today. And to everybody out there, until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.